This is Chalupa. He is just introducing the video with me. Believe it or not, we are not talking about cats today. We are actually talking about a knife. This is a new knife by Real Steel. We are talking today about the Real Steel Huginn. And I had an animal help me introduce the video because this knife is named after an animal. It's actually named after one of Thor's ravens. So let's unbox it here, see what we've got. Box comes with some catalog info, your general warranty info. This is an exploded view of a knife. I don't think that it's actually this knife. There's several knives on here. It's mostly a catalog. You also have a nice microfiber cloth. And inside the cloth, we have the actual knife. Now, if you've seen my short on this knife, you'll know that I really do like it. This is a VG10 steel, G10 handle. There's some nice features of this knife that are not typical on a knife of this price. As usual, I'm going to talk ergonomics, I'm going to talk my testing, and I'm going to talk conclusions about this knife. So this knife, I think it has great ergonomics. It has some nice attention to detail stuff here. This thumb stud has some very fine texturing on it that allows you to get a nice grip on it, but it doesn't dig into your thumb. I love that texturing. Thumb stud's in a good place for me. I found that this knife was very comfortable in my hand, extra large size hands. My wife found the opposite. She did not like this knife at all. It felt uncomfortable and she had trouble finding purchase on it for her fingers to not close it on herself. I didn't have any of that problem. This knife fit my hand like it was made for it, so I loved it. The back spacer on the back is brought up much higher than it is on most knives. That goes a long way toward making this comfortable when you're cutting into wood or other firm things. It made a nice feel to it that I appreciate whenever that's done on a knife. The fit and finish on this are better than any Benchmade I have ever owned. They have given the edge of the liners here an angle so that when you grip it, it doesn't dig into your hand. I love that feature. Also, they've made the tips of the axis lock sit out a little bit more than they do on most knives, which makes it easier to open and close without binding or without having to fiddle for the lock. Thumb stud is in a good place. I love the feel of this. Size is well packaged too. This is a pretty large knife. This is kind of between a bug out and an SOCP almost. There it is next to a bug out. Here it is next to a griptilian. You can see it's actually even a little larger than a griptilian. Has a lot more cutting surface to the blade than a griptilian if I line up the cutting surfaces. So I really like this. It feels nice and smooth. I'm not sure if it has bearings or not. It's smooth enough it feels like it has bearings, but I'm not 100% convinced. I'll have to see when I take it apart. We'll find out together. This is on the lighter side for a knife that is as large as it is. I'll place the specs down there. It's under 4 ounces. So 3.8, 3.6 ounces depending on your measurement. Pretty nice for a knife that's this large. There is only one screw in the pocket clip. Not a huge fan of that, but it seems to work okay. So overall ergonomics, very strong for me, very not so strong for my wife. Testing. So when I was actually testing it, this knife did 350 cuts through the dowel after sharpening before it started to have any tearing on the paper. That's better than typical for a steel like VG10. This means that they've done a wonderful heat treat on this steel. It kind of overperforms for what it is. 350 is toward the upper end of what I usually get, even for knives that cost twice this much. So well done on the steel. Again, I found it comfortable in the hand. There's enough curve in this blade to cut well against a flat surface. There's also enough real estate on the blade that's long enough to cut through cord well, even though you still have this curve. So it's a well-balanced blade. It's shaped well. I love the fact that the screws don't have Torx bits. They have flathead screwdriver slots. I'm going to go ahead and disassemble this now. I think you're still going to have to take out that Torx, but I want to show you that this is kind of a cut above the normal, you know, just standard knife here. Now you do have to have somewhat of a narrow flathead screwdriver. You'll see neither of the ones that I had there will fit. I do have a narrower one here that I'm going to use to disassemble this. So we'll start by getting the pivot bolt out. Here is the pivot. Magnetic tray so I don't lose things. Here's the other one. Yeah, when you are traveling, if you are a traveler as I am, you are going to be places where your knife might get dirty. You are probably not going to have a set of Torx head bits with you when that happens. If it does happen, and you happen to have a flathead screwdriver or a multi-tool or anything like that, you can disassemble and clean this knife. That's not true of a lot of other knives. Now, you can't completely disassemble it, as I'm just finding out for the first time, because there are some Torx bolts on the inside. So that's a bit disappointing. But, you know, I kind of like the fact that you can at least tighten the pivot without disassembling the whole knife, or without a Torx bit. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to dig out my Torx and get the bolts out of here. You can see the pocket clip is lugged into that steel plate there. So it is not going to strip. It's not just in the G10, which I am glad, because it looked like it was just in the G10 spacer. So that's been thought out pretty well. Pocket clip is reversible. You know, all you have to do is flip it over to the other side like that if you're a lefty. So actually a pretty decently thought out pocket clip there. Let's pop these out and see what happens if I don't take out the internal T6s. I believe I'm still going to have to get it disassembled. But we'll find out. It's worth trying. I am doing this for the first time on video. Okay, so even without taking out the T6s, I can get the blade out. I can get the lock out. So you can take that down to a pretty good skeleton without taking out those internal T6s. You can at least mostly get it done. You can probably get it mostly apart in the field without, you wouldn't be able to take off the scale fully, because that pocket clip does run interference for getting the full bolt out. But you could pop that pivot out. Let me demonstrate. So if this is on here, you got this bolt in here. Let's say I had the axis lock back in here. Let's put it fully in like so. Even if I had the pocket clip on here and it was bolted on, I could still pop that pivot bolt out, and then I can lift the scale up over the axis bolt and flip it to the side. And I can still disassemble everything but the back half there without a T6 bolt. So I still can field strip this without removing the T6s. So good feature there. I like it. It's not 100% what I would have done, but it does work. And I am going to fully disassemble this because we're doing a video about disassembly. So there is the one T6 bolt that holds together your internal structure on the knife. And then you've got a couple pins that run through that hold the spacer on there. And you've got the stop pin back here out at the back of the blade. There's the internal pin on the spacer there. There's another one back here for a lanyard spindle. And there is your pocket clip lug kind of thing. These do not appear to be, oh, they are. They're double washers. So they're not bearings. They kind of look like bearings, but it's just a double washer there. They have not over-skeletonized the Tang on that blade, so that is still a relatively sturdy Tang. I like how they have recessed around the stop pin. That makes a sturdy configuration. So overall, this is a well-built knife. The blade stock is not overly thick. This is definitely toward the EDC carry side, but it's a sturdy EDC. So I'm actually very impressed with this. My conclusions about this knife are that this is a great sub $100 knife. As for who should buy it, it's really anybody who likes the feel of it in your hand. If this fits your hand well, you're going to love this knife. If it does not fit your hand well, you're probably going to hate it. So kind of polarizing on the grip, but overall a very solid knife. If it fits your hand, there's nothing to complain about. That is my review. Like, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. Enjoy your adventures. Have a nice day.